Admiral Zekthara clicked his mandibles in amusement as he reviewed the intelligence reports from the third planet of the Sol system. The bipedal creatures there had barely achieved faster-than-light travel, still relying on crude chemical propulsion for most of their vessels. Their weapons technology was laughably primitive: kinetic projectiles, explosive warheads, and electromagnetic pulse devices that belonged in a museum. Humans, he pronounced the word with the same tone one might use for an annoying insect. They call themselves the dominant species of their world, yet they wage war with metal slugs and fire sticks. The Kethmoran Empire had conquered 47 star systems using their advanced plasma shields and quantum disruptors. Their energy barriers could deflect any known projectile weapon, while their disruptor arrays could atomize entire fleets from light years away. These humans would be no different from the other primitive species they had subjugated. Commander Veltash, Zekthara's second-in-command, studied the tactical displays. Their largest vessels measure barely 800 meters, Admiral. Our flagship alone outmasses their entire fleet by a factor of 20. Then this will be over quickly, Zekthara decided. Deploy the standard intimidation formation. Once they see the futility of resistance, they'll surrender their world without bloodshed. The Kethmoran warfleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. 200 vessels arranged in a perfect sphere, their hulls gleaming with the distinctive blue-white energy of plasma shielding. Each ship was a masterpiece of advanced engineering, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. The human response was immediate but puzzling. Instead of fleeing or transmitting surrender codes, their crude vessels began forming defensive formations around their homeworld. Zekthara received a transmission from the human command structure, a gruff-voiced male who identified himself as Admiral Chen of the Terran Defense Force. Alien vessels, you are in violation of Terran space. Withdraw immediately, or we will be forced to defend ourselves. Zekthara's translator struggled with the concept of defend themselves when applied to such a massive technological disadvantage. Human Admiral, your species has been selected for integration into the Kethmoran Empire. Surrender your world and your people will be treated fairly as a client species. Thanks, but we'll pass, came the response. You want Earth? Come and take it. The sheer audacity of the statement left the Kethmoran command staff speechless. Zekthara activated the fleet's weapon systems, confident that a demonstration would end this farce quickly. Target their largest vessel. Minimum power. We want survivors to spread word of our capabilities. The quantum disruptor beam lanced through space, a coherent stream of exotic particles that could unmake matter at the molecular level. It struck the human flagship dead center, and for a moment the Kethmoran crew waited for the spectacular explosion that would mark the end of human resistance. Instead, the human ship's crude metal hull glowed white-hot for several seconds, then resumed its previous dull gray appearance. Damage readings showed some surface scoring, nothing more. Impossible, Veltash whispered. Our weapons should have vaporized that vessel. Admiral Chen's voice crackled over the communications channel again. Nice light show. Our turn. What happened next would be studied in military academies for centuries to come. The human vessels, primitive as they appeared, began launching projectiles that barely registered on Kethmoran sensors. Simple metal slugs propelled by chemical explosions, moving at velocities that seemed almost pedestrian compared to energy weapons. Zekthara's flagship automatically raised its plasma shields to maximum power. The energy barrier that had deflected the weapons of 47 civilizations flared brilliant blue as the first human projectiles approached. The metal slugs passed through the shields as if they weren't there. Status report. Zekthara barked as alarms began wailing throughout his ship. Hull breach on decks 7 through 12, his engineering officer reported in shock. The projectiles, they're not energy-based. Our shields are designed to deflect plasma and particle beams, not solid matter. More impacts shook the flagship as additional human rounds found their mark. Each projectile was a simple cylinder of depleted uranium, accelerated to incredible velocities by electromagnetic rails. The physics were elementary, kinetic. Energy equals 1/2 mass times velocity squared, but the Kethmoran had become so focused on energy weapons that they'd forgotten the devastating power of basic momentum. All ships evasive maneuvers, Zekthara commanded, but his vessels were designed for standoff engagements with energy weapons. They were massive, heavily armored, but not particularly maneuverable. The human ships, by contrast, danced between the catamaran formations with surprising grace. "Admiral," Veltash called out, "we're receiving damage reports from across the fleet. These kinetic weapons are penetrating our armor. Some ships are reporting complete hull breaches." The tide of battle had shifted dramatically. Human fighters, tiny craft that the Kethmoran had initially dismissed as irrelevant, swarmed around the larger alien vessels, firing projectiles that punched through advanced armor like paper. The Kethmoran's sophisticated targeting systems, designed to track energy signatures, struggled to lock onto the chemically propelled munitions. "How is this possible?" Zekthara demanded. "They're using Stone Age technology." Admiral Chen provided the answer during their next communication exchange. "You see, the thing about us humans is that we've spent our entire evolutionary history finding new ways to throw rocks at things we don't like. We've gotten pretty good at it." The human explanation was simultaneously primitive and profound. While the Kethmoran had developed increasingly sophisticated energy weapons and corresponding defenses, they'd abandoned the fundamental principles of kinetic warfare. Humans, limited by their technological development, had instead perfected the art of hurling objects at tremendous speeds with devastating accuracy. As his flagship's hull continued to buckle under the primitive assault, Zekthara made a decision that would haunt his military career forever. "All ships withdraw to minimum safe distance. We need to reassess our tactical approach." The Kethmoran fleet retreated, leaving behind several crippled vessels and their absolute certainty in technological superiority. The humans had won the first engagement not through advanced technology, but through the brutal application of physics principles that predated civilization. In the aftermath, as his engineers worked frantically to develop countermeasures against kinetic weapons, Admiral Zekthara received one final transmission from Admiral Chen. "Next time you want to call someone primitive, Admiral, maybe check if their primitive weapons can actually hurt you first. Oh, and Zekthara, those were just our practice rounds. You really don't want to see what happens when we get serious about throwing rocks." The Kethmoran Empire would eventually develop defenses against kinetic weapons. But by then, the humans had moved on to even more creative applications of primitive technology. Throughout the galaxy, the story spread of the species that had defeated an advanced war fleet using weapons their ancestors might have recognized. Sometimes the old ways were the best ways, especially when your enemy had forgotten why those ways had worked in the first place.